And our very special guest today on Absolutely Famous is a legend of not only Canterbury Rugby but South Island Rugby out of the mighty Shirley Rugby Club in Christchurch. The one and only Curly Mo Allan Lindsay. Alan, Curly, how are you, mate? It's been a long time.
Oh, good, John. It's great to see you, mate.
Great to see you too. I was looking at your rugby CV the other day, and golly, you've not only played for some teams but you've coached some teams. You must have had a hell of a lot of fun.
Oh, God, yeah. It's something that once I stopped playing, you just can't get out of your blood. I think the whole Shield era and that, there's a lot of us end up doing a lot of coaching, and I think that was just with the work ethos and that from like Doug and Alex, that sort of stuck with a lot of us. And I think I've sort of coached some rep teams, I've coached some senior teams, coached some schoolboy teams. It was just, I think it's just great seeing how young fellas coming through, learning the game, sort of passing on some pearls of wisdom, as it were.
Well, you've certainly got a few pearls of wisdom. You must. I think you were reserved for Canterbury for over 80 games, and it's hard to believe that every single match of that brilliant Shield era, 83 to 85, Bruce Dean's played every single minute of every single Shield match. That is amazing.
Yeah, oh,
The late
yeah,
Bruce
no,
Deans.
he's pretty resilient. He was, I think, in the whole time, I think I stood up out of my seat maybe twice, and then sat back down again. Because there was no blood bins in those days, no HIAs. Bruce would just shake his head or he'd get a bit of Vass on the eyebrow or something, and he'd just carry on. So he was tough as old boots.
He was too, from North Canterbury farming stock, and what a fabulous. I was lucky enough to be, of course, living in Christchurch, and you and I played cricket together on occasions, which was a lot of fun too. But that Shield team, I remember saying to my mates at the time, they played rugby way ahead of their time. It was just so good to watch.
Yeah, it was good. It was probably and surprising if people look at it from the outside in, that they think that Grizz would be more sort of forward orientated. But yeah, he was keen to use the ball and use it. We did. He knew he had talent out wide. You like your Gary Hoopers and your Craig Greens and your Andrew Masters and Dennis Woods and Joe Leota. They all roll off the tongue. He was keen to get ball wide. And I think he was. Everyone bought into what he was keen on doing, which was good.
And because the forward pack, it was a really good forward pack, but it wasn't always a dominant forward pack, was it? I remember a couple of games in particular against, I think it might have been Waikato and Bay of Plenty, were really close, and but you just pull it out of the fire, and Robbie Deans would kick a magnificent penalty or something, or there'd be a great try out of nowhere, and the Shield would be safe again.
Oh gosh, yeah, Bay of Plenty. They had Steve McDowell then. The Wellington scrum gave us a bit of a hammering a few times where the props were up in the air a bit. But and that was when there was if you had a dominant scrum, you're allowed to really utilise it. So I think we sort of had other strengths, good loosies, good line out forwards, and we scrambled it away from scrums, but certainly got parity, if not more, in the line outs, and good loose forward trio, week in, week out. That was pretty consistent.
But it must have been a lot of fun playing in that team, because apart from the fact there was a lot of rugby intellect, there was an ability, there was a few practical jokers in there, I'd suspect.
Oh gosh, yeah. Gary Hooper, the one that rings to mind straight away. He was in his element. Him and Alex, they were sort of unknowingly the centre of a lot of laughs. But it was, I think, we trained very hard. I think, and then when we let our hair down, we let our hair down as a team. You didn't, and everyone was pretty tight. You didn't, even when we were overseas or up north, or everyone stayed sort of. You didn't have guys going off on their own tour. So collectively, you got up to a lot of fun. Your opportunities, you were staying in a hotel, which in those days, you got fed and watered, and there's always having a beer afterwards or something. So it was, the team got on well, and I think a lot of the fun was out of the after the hard times. There was always a bit of relief, so it was a lot of laughs.
Yeah, well, I remember a couple of the Sunday sessions. I was heading down to Lancaster Park for cricket practice in the indoor nets, and you boys would be filing into the through the number one gate there and supposedly going to practice, but didn't always happen.
No, it was. I think Alex had a good knack of uh, when to put the hammer down and when to let it off. There'd be times where um, we'd be all set for a bit of a gut buster, and we would go out, go 2 laps around the roundabout, and we'd be back in the bar. And it was. And then it was straight into it, and it was, this would be after a big night on a Saturday night or something, and I think it got to the stage here in town where, if you knew you had a big practice the next day, you'd have a quiet Saturday night, just so you'd be right for training the next day.
Classic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we trained. I think we trained harder than most teams. I think, and those are the days where you played club footy on Saturday, then you had Canterbury training on the Sunday. And it would be, the early ones we had, Alex was worried about fitness, so it'd be 3 hours. After we lost to Canterbury, we had a big blowout and a night training, which went on and on and on and on and on, but he tended to pick his moments. He knew when we were flat, and he'd take the foot off the throat a wee bit and do sort of something that was, we'd do some bonding, usually over beer or something, but it was, that's where a lot of the laughs were created. You'd be playing silly games with the dartboard, and arrows that get thrown in different places. Yeah.
I can imagine. Doug Bruce, he was sort of.
No one lost tonight, so it's quite good.
No, that's amazing. Doug Bruce, he was sort of the quiet assassin, wasn't he, Doug? I played cricket against Doug when we had the old Lancaster Park games out at Oxford. A hell of a nice bloke. And what sort of role did he play in the team?
Oh, I suppose it was your classic good guy, bad guy. Alex being the bad guy most of the time. Dougie, great rugby brain. Great 10 in his day. Kick drop goals off both feet. And he was a great, good sounding board for the likes of Wayne Smith and Wayne Burley, Kieran Kane, Warwick Taylor. He played the game with the All Blacks. He won a Grand Slam tour. He played a lot of footy for Canterbury, so he's passionate about it. He was, him and Alex had played a lot of Canterbury country together, a lot of Canterbury together, coached a bit of Canterbury country together. So they complemented each other pretty good. He had quite a dry sense of humour. And he'd have he'd say something quite poignant after Alex had dropped something on us. So he was always good.
He smoked like a train too back in the day.
Oh, yeah, it was. If you look back in the stands in the old days, all the reserves are halfway up number 3, and you'd have Kieran Kane and Doug, giving each other cigarettes,
Perfect build-up. Yeah, and of course you went on you played 25 games for Canterbury, which is fabulous, and you played for the New Zealand Sevens for a couple of years. That must have been a wonderful experience.
Oh, it was loved it. I'd only been to Australia one trip in my life, and all of a sudden I went from playing at the National Sevens in fielding, getting named in the team, and then a week later we were in Auckland training. And then I'm flying to Hong Kong. So I had to get a passport. Great. Some of the guys I'd looked up to were in that team. There was like Hicka Reid. We had Bruce Smith, the All Black winger. I'm just remembering Andrew Donald, Joe Stanley. It was an exceptional team. We had Richard Fry, who was a good wee team.
Glenn Rich, I think, was he the big tall fella?
What's that?
Glenn Rich, he was in that team too. He's a good player.
Yep. But Glenn, it was sort of groundbreaking stuff that would always sent a provincial champion. I think the year that Auckland went, they'd end up bowing out in the bowl, I think it was. So Hong Kong said, unless you send a national team, you can't come. So they picked a team the next year that never went, and then we were lucky. The 83 team was the first year we went over there, and we had Bryce Rope. He was manager coach, and we struck a downpour. The field was just mud, and we got knocked out by, I think it was Western Samoa in the quarters that year. But then we came back the next year on a good track. We had sort of likes of Wayne Smith, David Kirk, John Kerwin, young fella, who went on to do great things. And we got through to the final, but we got done by Fiji in the final that year, 26-0.
Amazing experience. Of course, it all started for you, mate, out of the Shirley Boys High and the Shirley Rugby Club. They were great. I remember coming down to watch you quite often on a Saturday. You had your mate Colin Williamson at first five. You would have played a few games together there.
Yeah, he's known him since Form 1, Little Intermediate. We did judo together at Crichton Coppers, and then played a bit of underage footy. I was inside Rod Latham for up until about under 14s, and then Colin and I got smaller as everyone else got bigger, so we played a bit of under 16s, under 9s, I think it was, and then played 19s together. Then we played seniors for Shirley for God knows a year. So I think the only time we played Canterbury together was we played against Warwick Bush when we had the South African tour got called off, when the All Blacks were all set to board, or the Cavaliers were all set to board, and then they got held back. So Colin and I, we played Warwick Bush. I think we either drew or lost that game. So it wasn't a great memory for the pair of us playing rep footy together.
I bet you had some great memories for the club, though. It was, club rugby was, of course, huge in those days, wasn't it? I mean, most of the All Blacks played, or all the All Blacks played club footy.
Oh, crocky. Well, I remember the year we made the final for the first time. We played a varsity backline. They had Gary Barker at halfback. They had Mark Littlecote at 10. They had Warwick Taylor and Vic Simpson in the midfield. Andrew McMaster on one fullback. They had Craig McDowell, who played NZ Jewell on the other wing. You had a backline stack with that year. I think Victor and Warwick had been the midfield pairing against Argentina on the tour there. So you got to play against All Blacks every second week, test yourself against the best. And whereas nowadays it's, if Richie McCaw plays for Christchurch, you get 2,500 people watching. Andrew Mertens plays, there's another 2,500 people watch. It was, I was lucky enough to coach teams against when those guys played. I was coaching, it was Lincoln University when Sonny Bill played for Belfast, and the place was chocker.
Yeah.
And it used to be commonplace. You just got your usual amount of people coming along, but that's Vic Simpson, that's Albert Anderson, Murray Davey, and plus now, crikey, that's you got All Blacks playing club footy. People go over the name.
Yeah. So how does club footy go at the moment? I know back in my old hometown of Blenheim, it's struggling a bit. I think there's more going on in the Division 2, which is sort of a little bit more social or doesn't require as much commitment practice-wise. What's it like in Dunedin where you are at the moment, for example?
Did the varsity A team this year. I was just doing the backs, helping out Peter McIntyre and Craig Lawrence, and different mindset. You've got. I think the first year we made a final with Shirley. I think the average age of our team was 27. Whereas nowadays there's not much difference between a Colts side and a Premier side. Particularly varsity A, you have second or third year students, but they're still only like 21. So the average age I've found is like very, very low. It used to be the days you'd get if you had an under 19 side or under 20s, 21 side or Colts, you might have one or two that played seniors. Now you've got every under 20 side now. It's the grade that a lot of guys that are virtually straight out of seniors or straight out of high school. So they've got younger. There's less, dare I say it, the battle-hardened veterans. You might get the odd club side down here like Harbour. We'll have some guys that are, when I say old, mid to late 20s. And the amount of guys that played 100 games at the club is less and less. But if you've got one, it's rare down here. But I think that's did the last 3 years at Kike, and they had a few old heads, but they had a lot of young fellas as well. So yeah, I think now the guys that used to hang around and be content with playing club footy, they have an opportunity to go overseas. The New Zealand name is still strong, rugby brand, going to the UK. In our day, you basically had to play Shield Rugby to get free airfares. Now it's almost like you play Premier Rugby in New Zealand, you get a free airfare to some third or fourth division club in Scotland or Wales. So it's a different kettle of fish now. That you can get an OE out of it pretty easy from the sounds of things.
Yeah, yeah, it is a shame that club rugby, because I mean it was the same playing cricket. We got to, well, Bevan Congdon was in our senior team and he was the New Zealand captain at the time, and it's the same with rugby. It was a great learning place for young people, and even people like myself who were never good enough to play at the top. It was still a wonderful experience that I'll always cherish.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like I can remember playing Canterbury's games against guys like Brent Elder. He was in his late 30s. I still get to play against him. He'd been an All Black trialist. He'd been behind Lynn Davis, in Canterbury. And the opportunity now is you tend to find that the only experience you can pass on is more as a coach now, because those older players aren't there to really input that, this is how you do things, you'll be better if you did it this way, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You have a lot of guys straight out of school. They've had the schoolboy huckers. They've had the 1,000 people watching them, and all of a sudden they're playing Premier Colts, and there's mum and dad on the sideline again. It's a bit of a harsh reality that once you're out of that school system, there's not really the people are used to that sort of thing. They find they come down with a bit of a thud. But you find the more grounded ones, they're straight into it. It's in your mind, But it's interesting that some of the concept, the mind process behind some of these young fellas.
Yeah, you just got to remember, don't you, why you play the game in the first place? The fun and the camaraderie of whoever you're playing with or coaching.
Exactly. And it's a great way to get to know 20, 30 guys in a hurry, isn't it?
Well, certainly is. Yeah, if I was moving to town, the first thing I'd do is join a cricket club. You got 50 instant mates. Yeah, exactly. Your coaching career, Al, extensive, outstanding. You coached club sides, Canterbury Country, and you also coached West Coast to win the Seddon Shield. Now, for those who don't know about the Seddon Shield, that is a big deal. Still is in the top of the south. West Coast, Buller, Marlborough, Nelson Bays, that is huge up there. And for West Coast to win it, that must have been one hell of a night.
Oh, it was. We played for it up there, and they had Marty Banks playing for them. And because he'd gone up there he was on the fringe of Marco's. He played for Nelson, and of course, it was Nelson sort of had always basically thumped West Coast, and they always let us play our imports that would play in the Heartland competition. And so we're lucky. We had a couple of good locks. We had Big K, Claviality, and JJ Manning. They're both Canterbury B players. One had been overseas, so he was down as a local, and JJ was down as one of their imports. So we had two big locks. We had Tim Priest, who played a bit of Canterbury B at 10. He was my size, but could kick goals from all over the place. And he put over a drop goal to win the Seddon Shield for us. So to put it in perspective, they hadn't expected to lose it that day. So when we went to the pub for the aftermatch, they had to go find it and bring it down. And then we had a hell of a bus trip home. It was, I'll tell you what, those West Coast boys, they know how to enjoy themselves, I tell you.
Do they what? I watched Buller beat Marlborough for the Shield back in the early 90s, and when Glenn Alley was captain, and boy, Jesus, did they have a celebration? It was brilliant.
Yeah. Well, they had a guitar, a few beers, and the rest was just your horse by the time you got back to Greymouth, I tell you.
Yeah, great. Well, other things they're no doubt even for you who's played the national side, there'd be highlights for you, I'm sure.
Oh, that was just, you're aware of the history of the Seddon Shield, and all of a sudden you look at the results up to then. They hadn't been, didn't really give us a show, but then it was a game that we were in right to the end, and then Tim Priest knocked over that drop goal. and it was just, it was Christmas really. It was good emotion because that was early on our coaching piece, Sean Cut and I, and it was just icing on the cake. Started that season off really well, and then we just kept on clicking on from there. We had a great.
It's a special place over on the West Coast and New Zealand there, and I dare say you probably don't have to ever buy a beer again on the West Coast.
We had a great sponsor, the Pryor Hotel. We had Bernie Monk and his son Allan. They put the coaches and the any players up that had to come over for training and that. So Bernie was great value. Kath, his wife, and then of course Allan and his sister lived. They're running it now. But yeah, Allan was in the team that year, but didn't guarantee him a spot in the team, but he earned it.
Yeah.
But no, they were. They do their footy well over there. Yeah. Great local support, great sponsorship, and they just love the footy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great community, and you've done some quite a bit of work with the Crusaders as well for Max Sexton. I think developing young halfbacks, that'd be enjoyable watching the young fellas come through.
Well, I'll drop a few names. It was a little while ago now, but the likes of Andy Ellis and Willie Hines. Corey Tamu, Jamie Nutbrown, these guys all came through, and back then, it was I'd do it after work, and you'd Lee Golding would have us out at the schoolboy training camps, and you'd get a polar fleece top, and I think you get a tray of beer at the end of the year. But it was you do sort of an hour and a half of skill sessions with the halfbacks, box kicking, passing both ways, kicking with both feet. And I suppose that's something I'm finding now, even with the progression into professionalism. There's still a lack of basic skills. You'll get guys that can't kick with both feet. I talked about Doug Bruce, Warwick Taylor, Wayne Burley kicked with both feet, Wayne Smith with both feet. You get a lot of 10s that can't kick with both feet well, and same with 9s. You'll get a guy that's a natural right footer that's good for kicking off the base of a scrum. But then all of a sudden you've got a ruck on the other side of the field. Well, what do I do now? So did a lot of basic kicking drills with the likes of Andy Ellis and Willie Hines, Jamie Nutbrown, Matty France, and using kick with the other foot. Because the thing that sits in my mind, when Junior Tonu had a test in Auckland, he got caught on the sideline where he couldn't use his left foot. And that was the last test he played for the All Blacks. Whether coincidentally it was because of his kicking skills, I'm not sure. But it was always an example I've used to young fellas coming through. You never know when another leg's going to be able to get you out of trouble. So I enjoyed it. It was just passing on. I got my passing upskilled by Steve Scott down at a drum in the tennis court, Bird Park, trap and pass. And Scotty used to always do 100 a day, and that's something I've tried to tell these guys. The more times you pass, the better you're going to get. Yeah. It's just stuff that stay with me.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And you mentioned before off air that the joy you get out of coaching is not so much. You've coached teams that were maybe never good enough to win titles, but just watching the players improve and the difference that you could make with individuals, that would give you a lot of pleasure, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I suppose the best example I'd give was Les McFadden asked me to coach at his club, Belfast. And we had a lot of guys with big ticker, but, they probably weren't big enough, they probably weren't fast enough. We had sort of one attacking option at fullback. We had a Canterbury Sevens guy, and we had a good 10 that could kick goals. And so my best first year we got beaten by everybody by 30 or 40 points. And the second year we got beaten by everyone, but we're down to losing by 5, 6, 10 points. So defensively we could knock people over, but we just couldn't score tries or kick points. So that was probably, I saw that as a success, but a lot of people sort of said to me, what are you doing mucking around at Belfast? But it was, Billy Bush was there. I had the connection with Les for the Canterbury side. And it was, they're a great community-based club, huge junior section, and the results will come. They, in the past they had Wayne Smith, Kieran Kane, Marty Vincent, Hud Rickett played for them, and I just enjoyed it. It was just the history of the club, and you had guys that were batting above their weight. You know, they were never going to knock big teams over, but we gave a hell of a lot of teams right. You know, that was quite good. We got better as we went along with what we had.
Yeah, you can take a lot of pride out of that, that's for sure. I'm sure those boys appreciated it too, having someone, help them out.
Yeah, it was good. We had good old Craig Commons help me out too, Alex.
Oh, good stuff.
From the old Leagues Park days.
From the ninth grade, the ninth grade boys.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, he's good value.
I've become good mates with Gino Newman over here. He sends his regards too.
Oh, yeah.
Good Linwood boy.
Gino, Johnny Richardson, and Craig, the three of them.
Yeah, shockers.
Yeah. It's good to see them alive and well.
Yeah, no, they're good. They're in good form, that's for sure. Allan, the poor old All Blacks are, it's a bit of a shambles, isn't it, really? What's your take on what's going there? There just seems to me to be a whole disconnect somewhere along the way.
It is. It's for that first Irish test. You got two examples: the first Irish test and that Springbok test in Ellis Park. Two standout achievements, and the rest have been woeful. With a lot of unforced errors, and it's from guys that have been in the cauldron of Test rugby. They've been very good before. So it's hard to put your finger on it. I suppose a lot of it is when we get go forward ball. The Ellis Park test we were on top. Front foot ball, Moanga was very dominant. His kicking game from last week, the week before, was almost totally different. You had Havili doing chip kicks to the wing against to beat the rush defence. We didn't see that against Argentina. So it was almost like, with the analysis they do nowadays, they'll be aware of that defence. The Argentine defence was smothering. They big guys getting up fast, and we were very deep against South Africa. We didn't seem to adjust against Argentina. We've had this issue for 4 or 5 years now with rush defence. It's something the Springboks and the South African teams have done for years. Waikato used to be good at it. And here, you'd think would have unlocked it by now. And I thought we had against the Springboks. I thought we had the first test against the Irish. But we just seem to go back on. We just turned the page backwards again, don't we?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it all started with the Lions, didn't it? They sort of, when Warren Gatland brought them out, they sort of brought it out. We were aware of it first, and then, to me, rush defence is just good defence, really. It's how you put the other team off, I would have thought.
Yeah, because if I go back to if you remember the old French teams, Alex, they used to be almost 45 degrees.
Yes.
They'd be deep, and I remember watching Boys High years ago. Their winger was about 50 metres behind the play.
Yep.
And it's whether we go back to adjusting that, because the old story, the further the defensive line comes up, the more chance it has of becoming ragged. But we tend to be, it's like you use the Simmons analogy, use the space, might have to go back to come forward, use the depth, but it's certainly, I've found a lot of the stuff when I'm coaching young fellas, you bring up stuff that worked 10, 15 years ago, and because you're looking at it through a different lens now, it works again. It worked 15 years ago, and these guys are still new to them, and it's just what we did 15 years ago, basically. And it becomes second-hand nature that everyone defends for it, and then everything evolves from there. But sometimes you step back in time, you can find some of the answers. Yeah,
I'm a great fan of Folai Fakatava from Otago halfback. I think he challenges like the best halfbacks. He challenges the defence all the time. They can't go to sleep on him. I think that's an area where we're really lacking at the moment, and have done for a while.
Yeah, and it is. He seems to have fallen out of favour, and I don't know why. Because you've got both, Weber and Aaron. They're good passing off the deck. Weber probably runs a bit more than Aaron does now. Aaron used to run well, runs less now. I don't know whether that's by choice. Fakatava is certainly a spark. He reminds me sort of a latter day sort of Sid going.
Yeah, very much so.
Bit of detail. He's quite a wee nugget. Defensively, he's not scared of. I think Perenara is off the pace. His passing's never been a strong suit, whereas Fakatava's is efficient, and his running game's a lot better. So yeah, whether we see him coming back in the mix this Saturday, that'll be interesting because that's a different dynamic. You've sort of got Aaron carrying a wee bit, he's taxiing a wee bit and offloading, whereas I think Whakatava tends to be, he'll have a lick around the edges a bit more, which, you're looking at sort of points of difference, aren't you? So I think he's certainly got a bit more offering than what we've got.
Yeah, as far as the coaching is concerned, would you like to see Scott Robertson, say with his, well, no doubt if Scott does it, Leon will hopefully go with him, but do you think they would make a difference over time?
Yes, I think probably a bit of a poison chalice from here to next year.
Yeah.
I think they'll both bide their time, and I'd say the smart money, it's a shoe-in as far as post the World Cup, and it gives them a full cycle to implement stuff because I think you're not hiding to nothing at the moment. You're running out of time to develop sort of patterns of play with maybe a different cohort of players, whereas you'll have your usual cohort going to Japan or France, some retiring after the next World Cup. He'll have a fresh broom. So basically it'll be his DNA that he's imprinting on the players. I think Jason Ryan, he'll carry through anyway. Jace was the one that got me to got on the West Coast when he first did Canterbury. So, I watched with pleasure how well he's going. Yeah.
He seems like a really good man.
Oh, he is, yeah. They're very genuine.
Yeah, cool. Well, Curly, it's been great to talk to you, mate. Like I say, it's been a hell of a long time. I think it was you were coaching Canterbury Country and Blenheim, I think, last time I talked to you physically. So congratulations on all you've achieved, and I'm glad you're still living in the South Island. You're pretty close to where your family came from in Southland.
Yeah, I did right. Yeah, I've been to the old cemetery. There's probably more Lindsays there than anywhere else.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, God, they were characters. Wonderful people. Thanks, mate. All the very best. And once again, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and honour to have you on our show.
Appreciate it, Alex.
Thanks, mate.